Now, I am the biggest Dexter fan ever known to mankind, and I will defend this show through a lot, but even as a massive fan, I still have to be honest. This scene right here has to be one of the dumbest fight scenes in the entire show, and that is the scene where James Stokes finally confronts Dexter on the docks and gets the answer he has been chasing for what it feels like forever. He finally finds out that Dexter Morgan is the Bay Harbor Butcher. This should have been one of the most intense moments in the whole series. Stokes has been suspicious of Dexter from the very beginning. He always knew something was off about him, so when he finally has Dexter right in front of him with a gun aimed at him, he finally knows the truth. And in this scene, it should feel like Dexter is completely cooked, but the actual way this scene plays out is where I start losing my mind a little bit. Let's waste no time and get straight into it. So the first mistake Stokes makes is when he tells Dexter to put on the handcuffs. And at first that sounds so smart. He has Dexter at gunpoint, so you'd think Dexter is already done for. So obviously handcuffing him would make the most sense here. But then Stokes lets Dexter put the cuffs on in front of his body. That right there is already a problem, because yes, Dexter is technically restrained, but his hands are still in front of him. That means his arms are still usable, and most importantly, he can still use those handcuffs as a weapon if he gets close enough. And that is exactly what happens later. So right away, this scene is kind of telling us where it's going. Dexter puts the cuffs on in front, and it almost feels like the show is foreshadowing that those same cuffs are going to become the one thing that helps him get out of this. Now, to be fair, this does not look like a huge issue at first because Stokes has a gun pointed directly at Dexter. So in theory, if Dexter tries anything stupid, Stokes would be able to shoot him before Dexter even gets close enough to put him in danger. And that makes sense. If you look at the situation from far away, Stokes is still in control, but the scene starts falling apart the second Dexter gets up and begins walking toward him. Dexter starts moving pretty fast, and Stokes tells him to slow down. Dexter then replies saying that he's just following his lead, and that is where everything just starts to get ridiculous, because at this point, Stokes is walking backwards while Dexter is walking forwards. Stokes is the one with the gun, but somehow he is still the one being pushed into a worse position. He is backing up onto this sketchy dock with missing slats, and you can literally see him looking behind himself because he knows the footing is bad. That is why this part bothers me so much, because why is Stokes allowing Dexter to walk toward him like that? The easy way to avoid this entire situation is really simple. You put Dexter's hands behind his back, you make him turn around, and then you walk behind Dexter with the gun aimed at his back. That way, Dexter is not facing you, and Dexter cannot use the cuffs as easily, and he cannot close the distance without making it extremely obvious. Instead, Stokes put himself in the worst possible setup. It is basically the perfect environment for Dexter to try something desperate, and that is exactly what he does. Now, I know some people will say, well, why didn't Stokes just shoot Dexter the second he realized Dexter was trying something? And I get that question, because from the outside looking in, it seems like Stokes had multiple chances to pull the trigger. Dexter starts moving in, Dexter starts getting close, Dexter reaches for the gun, so why not just shoot him right there? But this is where I actually think the scene has a little bit of logic behind it, because Stokes cannot just kill Dexter. He needs Dexter alive. That is the entire point on why Stokes even came out there in the first place. Stokes has spent all this time looking suspicious himself. The department already thinks he is unstable. Like, he has been obsessing over Dexter, so if Stokes just kills Dexter on that dock and then tries to say, no, trust me bro, he was the Bay Harbor Butcher all along, that is not going to look good at all. In fact, it would probably make Stokes look even worse, because now Dexter is dead. The one person who could have been exposed is gone, and Stokes is standing there with a body and a story that sounds completely insane. Stokes needed to bring Dexter in alive, so I understand why Stokes does not want to kill him. That part makes sense, but not wanting to kill Dexter does not mean you handle him in the dumbest way possible. That is the difference. Stokes could have still played it by the book and been careful, because at that point he knew Dexter Morgan was a serious threat. Like, he knows he is the butcher at that exact moment, so he should have treated this like a SWAT team arrest and not like some lousy traffic stop, which it kind of felt like. When they start fighting over the gun, it becomes messy. Stokes does fire the gun during the struggle and hits hits Dexter in the leg, so it's not like he never pulls the trigger at all. But by that point, Dexter is already in close range, and the second Dexter gets that close, the gun is really no longer a clean advantage for Dokes. Now it becomes a fight for control, and once both of them fall into the water, Dexter's chances go way up, because on land, Dokes had the better position with the gun, but in the water, Dexter has a chance to turn the cuffs into a weapon, and that is exactly what he does. Because Dexter comes out on top with Dokes in a chokehold using the cuffs, and again, this goes all the way back to the first mistake. The moment Dokes let Dexter cuff him in front, he gave Dexter the exact tools he needed to survive. That is why this scene is kind of just funny to me, because the whole thing feels like Dokes basically handed Dexter his escape plan without even realizing it. And I know that sounds harsh because, I do love Dokes. James Dokes is one of the best characters in the show. That is why it is so frustrating to watch him make such a dumb mistake in the biggest moment of his entire investigation. This is the guy who has military experience, and this is the guy who knows how to handle dangerous suspects. So seeing him let Dexter walk toward him like that just kind of feels a little bit off. And I get it, the show needed Dexter to survive. Dexter cannot get arrested right there because the story would basically be over in season 2. The writers needed a way for Dexter to escape this situation without making Dokes look completely weak. But that is the problem, they kind of do make Dokes look dumb for a second. No, not completely dumb, because Dokes still has reasons for not shooting him, but dumb enough to where you sit there like, brother, come on man, you're way better than this. And what makes it stand out even more is that the writers are usually pretty clever when they want to be. There are plenty of scenes where the show does a great job showing how smart Dexter is without making everyone around him look like idiots. One of my favorite examples is the scene where Dexter manipulates Dokes into attacking him in front of everyone at Miami Metro. That scene is so much better executed because Dexter wins through psychology, not plot armor. Dexter knew Dokes is onto him, and he knew that Dokes is getting closer and closer to exposing him. So instead of trying to fight him physically or make some giant move, Dexter plays into Dokes' anger. He gives him this little quiet manipulation speech. He gets under his skin, and then Dexter headbutts him. Keyword, headbutts him. He does not punch him, and he does not need to do something that would leave an obvious sign on his hand. He headbutts him, which is actually a really smart choice, because when Dexter rushes out of the office and Dokes follows him, Dokes looks like he is the aggressor. Then Dokes shoves Dexter into a table, and Dexter's head gets hit first. So to everyone watching, it looks like Dokes just snapped and attacked Dexter for no reason. And the best part is, Dexter makes sure the evidence on his own body supports that version of events. If Dexter had punched Dokes first, there could have been bruising or marks on Dexter's hand. Someone could have questioned whether Dexter started it, but Dexter used his head, and then Dokes slams his head into the table, so the injury looks like it all came from Dokes. And that is brilliant. That is the kind of writing that makes Dexter dangerous. So I am not saying that this scene is completely unforgivable. I am just simply saying that this is pretty silly, and for a show that can be genuinely clever when it wants to be, especially the way Dexter manipulates people, this fight just feels like one of those moments where the writers needed Dexter to live and had to bend Dokes' intelligence for a little bit to make it happen. And I still think Dokes is one of the best characters in the entire series, but this dock fight, I don't know, this was one of those scenes where I watched it and I was like, Dokes, my guy, brother, you had one job, like you had the world at your fingertips. You were about to prove everyone wrong, but instead, you made the dumbest mistake you could possibly make.